First, I'll just refer you to some of the same information that Janet did yesterday. So I thought I'd kick off with a few basic things, and one question I've gotten before is, what do you do as chairman? It's often like I get the same question, what do you do as CEO at my company? So the role as chairman, I see, and Janet and I agree, I hope, these things, is to collaborate closely with her and the board on the strategic vision for the organization and try to help find consensus amongst our various board members. Certainly want to do my part to assist the team in achieving short and medium-term goals that we establish as an organization, provide feedback and support to Janet as appropriate and helpful, and assist in the creation of a unified voice, which is an important thing, but not always a straightforward thing. We have a very specific focus as an organization, which is one reason why ARM is very effective, I think more so than other groups in our industry. But nonetheless, there are different sizes and types of companies and organizations involved. Our constituency is more unique and broad in that we have companies, we have academic centers, we have patient organizations, and so trying to find a common voice can sometimes be challenging with the tricky issues of our day. But nonetheless, I think we've made great progress. I should also say that this slide served as my basis for telling and trying to explain to my wife why I got to go to Barcelona for work while she stayed home to work and care for our young child. I assure you that this was the most stressful presentation that I've given in many months. She's very skeptical, and I don't know that it was successful, but I made the trip anyway. So. I hope you enjoyed day one. I certainly did. I thought it went really quite well. There were quite a few themes that we saw come out of our various panels and presentations, some of which are highlighted here. Obviously, an incredibly robust clinical pipeline in our field, and importantly, several important products soon to come to market globally. Certainly strong and sustained interest from not just investors, which has been really quite remarkable and encouraging, but also larger number of and larger size of companies getting involved in our space, which is good. Some people fret about acquisitions of small companies and what that means, but in my opinion, it's added resources and more research in our very important area, and in the end, added investment in research means stronger outcomes for patients, and so I'm really encouraged by both the investor interest and company interest in this space. Certainly the regulatory environment feels very positive. We hear a lot of very encouraging things from higher ups, both in Europe, like Guido, who was kind enough to be with us yesterday, as well as in the United States. And I do believe that the regulators are interested in being our partners to try to collaborate on bringing these products to patients. All that being said, we have very important, significant challenges, in particular on the commercial side. I thought those panels were particularly interesting and did a nice job of summarizing the various issues that exist and that will not be easy to solve and will absolutely require significant collaboration between all the various stakeholders, and everyone involved is going to have to show some creativity and some willingness to change to solve those challenges, but I am also very confident that we will. Sort of on that subject, we saw a little bit of this yesterday with Janet. This is a slightly longer list because it covers, pending global approvals rather than just European focused. We obviously don't need to talk about each of these, but it's really fascinating and exciting to see this number of products coming to market in the near term, we hope, through their review and approval processes. And it highlights the importance of continuing our work on the commercial issues that I just mentioned on the last slide. It's interesting to take a quick snapshot of where we are on the market access side for some of the products that have been approved. On this chart, you see a star represents a positive HTA opinion, a check mark that it's actually a reimbursed product, and I don't try not to overinterpret the data in this case, given that it obviously interrelates with the regulatory status in each region for these products, as well as the order of nations maybe that companies have engaged in conversation with. But nonetheless, it's interesting data and worth continuing to monitor. what trends we see, and does the pace pick up, and does it show consistency globally, or are there certain regions that struggle to get to a positive place on reimbursement more so than others? So interesting data to monitor. This is a very busy slide, but I just want to take a minute on it. It largely restates, what was discussed largely in the commercial-oriented panel yesterday. But I'm extremely passionate about these issues, and so I think and because they are such important challenges for our space and for the most important objective we all have, which is that these products come to patients, I think it's worth spending a minute on. So when I think about the commercial challenges, they often are categorized, I put them in 3 buckets. The first is the need for new pricing and reimbursement models. And there was obviously, a good conversation about this yesterday. I think the simple reality is we live in a world today that is not designed to accommodate and pay for one-time therapies that produce years and years and hopefully a lifetime of benefit. It's just that simple. And so these systems need to evolve. And everyone involved has to find a way to get creative about that. And these challenges are significant. Undoubtedly, for me, getting to a place where the option to pay for these things over time, not necessarily a requirement. I think every product should be considered a unique opportunity. But for manufacturers to have the option to propose various price structures and to collaborate and try to solve the problem that exists for that payer or that nation from a budget or a need for outcomes. Let's find that path to make it easier to bring these products to market. The healthcare infrastructure is one that I think sometimes gets passed over, but less so by the companies that live in cell therapy space in particular, because this is an incredibly significant issue. And it was mentioned again by folks on the panel, but making sure that we're working with medical centers to ensure they're well trained to provide these therapies, and as much as possible can be partners in continuing with data collection, which is a very challenging subject. We talk casually about coming up with outcomes-based solutions, but what exactly you're measuring and how you collect that information is very difficult. In some indications, my company works in the severe neuromuscular disease, and patients require mechanical ventilatory support and often don't survive past their second birthday. Well, those are fairly straightforward outcomes for us to measure. Is the child on a ventilator or is the child alive? But if you work in something that involves a more challenging effort-based test, like a 6-minute walk test or something like that, well, that's a trickier endpoint to be following on an annual basis and trying to encourage a family to come in and be tested. So what we specifically mean in outcomes-based is real, and who's collecting those data, and how are we summarizing that for everyone involved, regulatory authorities, for payers, for ourselves, because like all of you, I'm eager to know how our patients do over time and how we can improve their care with time. So really challenging, important but challenging issues. And then the third one is manufacturing and supply chain, which did not get a lot of airtime yesterday. Maybe it will today, but this can't be ignored as a significant challenge as well. Manufacturing is an issue for all of us, including companies like mine in the AAV space, but supply chain more generally, also a significant issue, especially for those in the cell therapy space, as we think in particular about trying to bring these therapies to a global community. So all kinds of reasons to be creative. I think in the end, and it's an interesting concept to think of, is that we often talk about innovation in our industry, but largely with a focus on research and development. But I think we need to be thinking about innovation in the commercial arena as well, more so than we usually do. I think Dan mentioned it on the panel, and I wholeheartedly agree. It will take true innovation on the commercial side to solve these challenges, but it's just so important because in the end, it's just not acceptable for us to live in a world where we solve the immense challenges of the research and development of these products, but yet patients can't get access to them. That's not an outcome that's okay for me or for any of us in this room. So we must solve these challenges. So a day 2 agenda, lots of interesting topics to discuss and continue. I hope that you enjoyed, as I said, day 1 as much as I did. I'm looking forward to day 2. I was reflecting a little bit on it last night, and as I often do, whether it's on a long plane ride or whatever it may be. And I have to say, we're living in just such a fascinating time. And whenever I have the opportunity to get together with colleagues in this space, it becomes more real for me. But like so many of you, I'm so passionate about working with innovative science and impactful medicines and the challenge, the opportunity to take on interesting challenges. It's just a fascinating time to work in our space. And many of us have worked in the field, in the biotech industry for many, many years. And without question, it's the most interesting time of my career, and my guess is that that's the same for many of you. Just to be a part of this community at this time, it's a really wonderful opportunity. So I hope that you're embracing that as much as I am. I assume that you are, and that you are as passionate as I am, and so one request I have of you, which is a similar request to what I made at an ARM meeting earlier in this year in San Francisco, was that, you know, ARM can do a lot as an organization. It does do a lot as an organization. And our individual companies can do a lot to educate others. But in the end, every one of us as individuals is responsible for helping to advance this field. And a fundamental part of what we're trying to do, or need to do, is educate. It's not a word that came up as much yesterday, but only through education of everyone that we interact with. I'm talking about regulators, legislators, elected leaders, friends and family, media, whatever it may be. It's really important that we all take the time and make the effort to help the world understand the power of the science and the medicines that we're trying to develop, so that when change is needed, in particular on the commercial side, that those things can come about and they can do so in a timely manner. So I ask that of you. It's something that I try to do, and it's just a part of being in this field. So with that, I promised I'd wrap up in less than my allotted 15 minutes. So I actually went longer than I expected, to be honest. I have 2 minutes left. With that, I'm going to hand over to Maury Ruffin, our co-founder and senior advisor at ARM, to introduce the first panel, which I'm sure will be interesting. It starts to get to another area of great interest for me, which is time. What will the impact of time be on our field? And what I mean by that is we're solving these incredible challenges right now, but what will be the case in 10 years? What will we have learned from data and regulatory interactions, our patient outcomes, and how can our systems evolve? We need to solve the challenges right in front of us right now to make sure patients get access, but what will it be like in 10 years and 15, 20 years? Undoubtedly, we'll be improving on whatever systems we put in place today, but it's a really interesting thing to think about as well. So with that, I thank you. I hope you have a wonderful second day, and proud to introduce Maury.